Mike Gill, Billy Osborne, and joined now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. I believe was in the building last night for Sixers Heat as the Sixers close the Heat out. Timmy Legler from ESPN. He joins us now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Legs, how you been, man?
What's happening, gents? I'm doing well, man. Yeah, I was down there last night. What an incredible atmosphere. It's really fun to go down to Wells Fargo and see that kind of environment to watch the 76ers play. Even though the game was a little bit anticlimactic because the Sixers just made easy work of the Heat in the second half, and the Heat never really challenged. And you could say that actually about 3 of the games in the series. There was no drama whatsoever in the fourth quarter of 3 of these games, and it's because the Sixers were so dominant. So there wasn't really a lot of drama, but as a result, everybody was in a really good mood down at that building last night.
Yeah, and it was like, it seemed like the Heat were like doing every scratch and claw and making it ugly, but it almost seems that because they were so physical that they ran out of gas late in every one of these games. The Sixers blew them out in the fourth quarter. I think they had outscored by 42 going into the fourth quarter into last night. I don't know what it ended up last night, but it just seemed that physical style wore the Heat out.
Yeah, I mean, look, they outscored them by 57 points in the series total, so that's just domination in a 5-game series. And I think you're right. And what I saw last night at some point, mid-fourth quarter probably, it was almost a resignation that you saw settle in with the Miami Heat, that they were playing a better team. And there was just nothing that they could really do. And they had a couple of opportunities. They had a couple open threes, Dragic and Justice Winslow, I believe it was, at a time when maybe you cut it from 12 to 9 with enough time to make it interesting. It just didn't feel like the Sixers were really threatened. And the irony about last night was Sixers didn't play that well offensively. I mean, I've seen them play much better all year, even in this series. They didn't shoot well. Other than Redick, they were 2 for 18 from the three-point line, and a lot of those were clean looks. So it wasn't like one of their roles they got on last night. Like you've seen them go on where everyone's making threes, and you're also trying to deal with Simmons and Embiid. It wasn't like that last night, and yet they still cruised. They were the last 6-8 minutes of the game, so it's just impressive. There's no other word for it. The Sixers are an impressive team, and right now, to me, they look like the most complete team in the Eastern Conference.
Hey, Legs, this is Ozzy. Thanks for joining the show. Question for you. The Sixers, on February the 8th, we were just looking at, they were 25-25. Obviously, you know what you're talking about. What's the reason for the turnaround?
Well, I think what happened with a team like this that's this young, that is now incorporating, first of all, Embiid didn't play, only 33 games last year, so he missed basically the last half of the season for the most part. You bring in Ben Simmons, had not played in an NBA game. He comes into the mix. You go out and you add guys like Ilyasova and Bellinelli late in the year. This team was a work in progress most of the year with young players trying to lead them and get their own feet wet in the NBA while also being the leaders of the team. You're dealing with the distraction of number 1 pick in the draft not playing, and that was a daily topic of discussion. And they added pieces later that became huge for them. So they were a work in progress, Ozzy, and I think that just as the year went on and they started to fill in gaps and their young players started to really carry themselves with a lot of swagger, they got more confident, they got more continuity, and there was a belief that took hold of this team at some point a couple of months ago that there doesn't need to be a progression in the NBA like we always talk about where, okay, you win 10, then you're going to win 18, then you're going to win 28, and then you're going to be 500, and then you're going to have to be a first-round playoff team, and then so on and so on. They looked at it like, well, no, we're going to skip the line because we're good enough, because we've got 2 players that are transcendent talents, and now we've got the right mix of role players around those guys that make us really dangerous on both ends of the floor. So the confidence level kicked in once they got that continuity, and they started to look around the East. The other thing that helped them, look at the East. I mean, every team that we thought was going to be a team that could contend is flawed. Every team. Cleveland has been a mess most of the year. They've had 5 different versions of themselves, and they're still a bad defensive team. Washington underachieving. Milwaukee, I think, underachieved based on their talent. Miami, is not ready. Toronto's a team that had the best year, but they've also had a lot of playoff failures, and they still rely heavily on 2 guards to shoot the ball well in the postseason. Even though they've got a better bench, they don't have a lot of playoff success to point to. Boston's missing their top 2 players. So this was a year in which, as things started to come together, second half of the year, they're looking at the East going, well, why not us now? And once he started to believe that, that's when he saw the consistency with their play that's led us to this point now. They move on to the second round.
Hey, Legs, in this series, the first game they win going away. I mean, they bombing away from three-point land. It looked like a young Legler out there shooting threes all night, bombing away from out there. Then in game two, the Heat, ugly up that game and give the Sixers a problem. They beat them on their home court. Enter Joel Embiid. How much of a change and a difference maker was he to the series, or do you think the Sixers were still pretty prime to close this thing out pretty easily without him, or do you think entering Embiid was the difference in making this a 5-gamer as opposed to maybe a 7-gamer?
Yeah, I do think they would win the series anyway, but maybe it's a 7-gamer. It's going to drag out, and here's why. Go back to game 2. If you recall what they did to Philly, it was pretty amazing to watch. They made that a flat-out rock fight. They picked him up. They made Ben Simmons work 94 feet the entire game. They had bodies in front of him. They were hitting guys all over the floor. They turned it into a fight. And Philly looked to me a little rattled by that. They didn't have the freedom of movement. Their shooters were being held and grabbed everywhere they tried to go. They were dumping guys on cuts. They were, like I said, harassing Ben Simmons. I did a quick video to play for ESPN where Justice Winslow made physical contact with Ben Simmons 6 different times before he'd gotten over half court. That's what they tried to do to wear them down, and it worked. And then Dwayne Wade turned back the clock and had a phenomenal offensive game to get them through. Well, they were going to continue that strategy. The problem is when you see a guy like Embiid into the lineup for game 3, now all that energy that you were using to try to hit cutters and hold Ben Simmons and get in his way, well, guess what? You're going to have to take 2 bodies and put them on Joel Embiid everywhere he is because of the physical presence he is. And once you start to do that, there's only so much you can do defensively to hit people if you're commanding attention all over the court the way the Sixers were.
Right.
Now the 3-point shooters get unleashed again. Ben Simmons has more freedom. So when he came back into the lineup, it mandated that he was going to occupy a lot of attention in the lane. And what that did, it freed up guys on the perimeter once again. And then overall the talent and the balance and the number of shot makers on the part of the Philadelphia 76ers just far outweighs what Miami brings to the table. And that's why Miami just could not muster a legit threat over those last 3 games.
And you got to imagine that Embiid is not at 100%. I mean, he looked gassed in some of those games, and yet he still had a monumental defensive impact in Game 4. I mean, he was outstanding, 5 block shots, but he looked gassed in some of those games. You got to imagine that getting out of that series early is probably, I don't know, is that a good or a bad thing for him? Would you? I know you don't want to go 7, but you might have wanted to see him get some more action.
No, it's better that you get the rest. A couple of reasons.
Okay.
One, the way that series was going, it was getting pretty contentious. I mean, you had some altercations take place over the last couple of games. The last thing you need is something crazy happening. Somebody's getting suspended for 2 games at the start of the next series. So let's get that over with. When you play a team 5 times, it gets to the point you're sick of looking at the guy across from you, and it's starting to get edgy, and tempers are flaring. You've seen it all throughout the NBA playoffs. By game 3, 4, 5, guys are sick of what they're looking at. They're tired of guys being in the way when they're trying to make a punt because everybody knows what the other guy's running, and it just becomes harder to operate. And so tempers flare. Better to get it over with, get his face a little bit of time to heal, and now to sit back, and it gives them a chance to really hone in on that Boston-Milwaukee series and get ready for both teams, either direction it's going to go. Obviously, they're probably rooting for the Bucks because they would get home court advantage if that happens. And I think Milwaukee's going to win at home. I think they're going to force a game 7. And anything could happen up there. They have the best player in the series, not Puka. So, if you get to a 7th game, I know it's on the road, and history dictates the home team's going to win that 90% of the time. Well, this is weird because the best player thus far, talent-wise, is with the Bucks. So in a game 7, that could be a deciding factor, an X factor. So now the Sixers get back, rest, and watch those 2 teams and really put together the game plan depending on which way it goes.
Speaking to Tim Legler from ESPN, and Tim, Legs, a couple years ago, everybody talked about the Sixers. Man, they don't have anybody that can shoot. They need shooters. And it's just
anybody that can play.
Right, exactly. That's another thing. And, being obviously a lights-out shooter that you were, I mean, some of the things that I've seen over the last couple of years has been unbelievable to watch this team not only go from being a team that couldn't shoot, it seems like it's contagious, but also that they're so young and they pass the ball and distribute the basketball so well. And, again, being a former shooter like yourself, Well, why is this all coming together the way it is right now? I mean, you got to give the coach obviously a lot of credit, and then he pushed. There's some pieces as well.
Yeah, I give Brett Brown a lot of credit. And I think, look, you're talking about a guy that fell on the sword every night when this team was an embarrassment and a joke and a laughing stock of the league, what they were doing. And he went there every night, and he had to face the media, and he had to talk about it. And it was impossible to evaluate Brett Brown as a head coach. I mean, I get paid to do it for a living. It's hard to evaluate because I'd look at their offense some nights and I go, gosh, there's no movement, there's no action, they're not running anything that makes sense to me. And so you want to be critical of Brett Brown, but then I would say, well, wait a second, it must be difficult to try to implement an offense where you don't have the talent to run it. So it limits what you can even try to incorporate. Once you started getting talent in there, now he can start to get his style and put a stamp on it, and that's what you're saying, and I completely agree with you. And one of the things that I really saw throughout the year, and it was really fascinating watching it last night when I left the arena, because I see a lot of things that you're not going to see on TV because I'm looking all over the place. I'm looking at body language, interaction between players and coaches. I'm looking at stuff going on off the ball that you might not be paying attention to if you're watching on TV. I was so impressed with the weak side action that they get and the amount of cuts that they get away from the ball and how much their shooters are willing to run on given possessions and what that does to teams defensively, where eventually somebody's going to get free on a slip cut to the basket on a back screen. Someone's going to pop open for a three because of the attention you're giving to these cutters and these guys running around with a frantic pace. That is all coaching. You have to have players that want to do it, but you have to sell it to them that this is the style we're going to play, and everyone's going to benefit if we can get the ball hopping and moving, and everyone's going to touch it. And there's weapons and threats all over the floor. I saw plays last night where they got a layup on a back screen with 4 seconds left in the shot clock.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't see that in the NBA. Typically, get down to inside 8 seconds, somebody's going to start isoing, and you're going to overpound the ball, and you're going to take a contested pull-up jump shot. The Sixers continue to make you work throughout the possession, even if you defend them well. And it reminds me a lot of what Golden State does. It reminds me a lot of the willingness guys have to run, even though they know they might not get the ball. That's the essence of great coaching, is get guys to buy in to cutting and running and screening, even if it might not benefit you on this possession. When you get guys to buy into that, you have something special, and that's what Philadelphia has going on right now. So I give Brett Brown a lot of credit. I give them a lot of credit for identifying players to fit that kind of system. Even a guy like Dario Saric, who they had to recognize 3 years ago, was going to be the right guy. His multifaceted game is just fascinating to watch. It looks like he's got back pain the entire time he's out there. He's killing guys. It's a strange thing, his game, but it fits in because of his IQ, his passing ability, his willingness to move without the ball. Bellinelli and Redick, man, the way that they run and fly off those baseline screens at Covington, it creates so much pressure for defenses to be perfect in their communication, and very few teams can be. And as a result, you get something good if you're willing to work that hard and share the ball like that. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I think they're the second best passing team in the league, maybe the best on a given night, and I think they're also right there in the top 2 with player movement off the ball along with Golden State.
And I got to ask you then, we're talking so much about their offense, and, it is fun to watch, and they move without the ball, and they got shooters, and obviously Embiid can, bust you down low. But defensively, they come after you. I mean, they got guys they got 5 guys on the floor sometimes that are all buying into playing defense at a high level. They are giving effort on defense, and that gets lost in Golden State a lot, that they play very good defense. But this is a very young team that plays pretty high level defense.
Yeah, they do. And one of the things that they do defensively, and I love, and the stats back this up, the metrics back it up, which is, over the last 2 months of the season and on into this first round of the postseason, they've been the second best defensive team in the league based on points per possession, defensive efficiency rating. We call it. Utah's number 1, far and away, only allowing 94 points per 100 possessions. That's incredible. And that's what they've been able to do. And look, there's a reason that they went 28-5 to finish the season. And Philadelphia's doing it in the Eastern Conference. And one of the things I love, they don't fall into the trap, which is the easy way out of defensively, of switching everything. I see teams every night. It's just a new methodology in the NBA. Switch everything. It doesn't make sense to switch things that puts you at a disadvantage repeatedly. And I see it every night in the NBA. And it's a lot easier to switch physically. And the demands are less on you. And I think that's what coaches buy into, because that's what players want to do. because it's easy to switch everything. And I hope you get help if you get posted up or if you get isolated in the wing with a big guy guarding an elite perimeter player who's run a double team at him. I see it all night, every night. And there's some teams that still believe in fighting over screens and chasing the shooter around screens and hard hedge out of the big on a ball screen to force a guard to pick the ball up and then rotate back to your guy without just saying, oh, we're just going to switch everything. And you end up with guys like Sabonis in the Cleveland series guarding LeBron James 40 feet from the basket. It doesn't make any sense. You put yourself at a disadvantage with most switches. Very few teams have the personnel to get away with it. Golden State could do it more than most because they've got great size with their guards and wings and great athletic ability. They can do a lot of that. And Draymond Green can guard point guards at the 4 positions, different level, personnel-wise. Philly has good personnel to do it, but they choose to fight through a lot of stuff. And I think it's smart, and it makes teams work harder to get what they want rather than create mismatches just by setting one screen. And that's what I see a lot in the NBA. And Philly, to their credit, they do a lot of things where they stay with their guy and they fight through screens. They try to stay size on size, and they prevent that guy from being caught up in an island on the perimeter or in the post. And I give a lot of credit. I think that's a tribute to why they've been so good defensively. Tim
Legler, ESPN's with us. So Boston or Milwaukee, who's the better matchup for this Sixers team?
Well, here's the thing. I mentioned a second ago. Antetokounmpo's the best player in the series, so that's dangerous. And they got a lot of guys who can score. With Middleton and Jabari Parker, Bledsoe can get it going at times. They've got guys that can put the ball in the basketball, and they've got an elite level player in Antetokounmpo. But there's something about Boston and their connection to each other and the chemistry they have and how smart they are, how hard they're going to make you work. And I also think they've got exceptional coaching. I would probably say you'd rather want to play Milwaukee, even though they do have the best overall player between the two teams that's playing and healthy. Because Boston, there's something about that team and the way that they buy into each other and the way they buy into their head coach that makes it a really difficult matchup. Either way, Philadelphia's winning that series. Philadelphia will be playing in the conference championship, I do believe, and most likely going to get Toronto, although they find themselves suddenly in hot water with 2-2 against Washington. A huge game tonight. Indiana-Cleveland 2-2, huge game tonight. I actually think this is the biggest night we've had in the playoffs so far with the ramifications of some of these games, including Oklahoma City possibly being eliminated tonight by Utah. So it's a huge night in the NBA. I think Philly will be playing in the conference championship, though, at minimum. And then depending who they play, maybe you have an inside track to the finals. We've got to wait and see. I don't have to predict that yet, but I do think they're going to win the next round, whether it's Boston or Milwaukee.
Unbelievable to think about the Sixers and where they are right now. I mean, they've advanced things so quickly. Tim Legler's here with us. They win last night over the Miami Heat. We've got the key matchups tonight. You got LeBron playing tonight against the Pacers. You got the Washington Raptors, and then tomorrow you got that Eastern Conference Celtics. And by the way, if the Celtics win tomorrow night, they will play the Sixers on Saturday night at 7:30. And the one difference, Legs, is that game would be in Boston. You would lose the home court advantage. That's another key reason why you probably want Milwaukee in that series.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, home court for sure. Philly's proven they can go win road playoff games. Did it twice in Miami, so they can do that. But you're right about that. Obviously, you want to have every advantage, and if that means a game 7 is to be played, you want it to be played on your home court. So certainly that is something that plays into that as well. It was interesting last night at the arena. I'm laughing and joking because I'm saying, man, you can tell the difference in the atmosphere of Philadelphia sports right now, right? There's like rainbows and butterflies everywhere you go, and everybody's in a great mood, man. And there's no cynicism because right now, what do they know? They know the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Villanova getting a parade. The Flyers got bounced, and some people are upset that they're a playoff team, and now you got the Philadelphia 76ers making this run. It's good times to be a Philadelphia sports fan. There's no question about it. And you could sense it in the arena last night, just the mood, the optimism. People expect great things now out of their teams. They don't have the cynicism that they had for a long time. And Philly to go from 10 wins to potentially the conference finals or maybe the finals in a couple of years is really incredible.
So when you're looking at the Sixers right now, Legs, everybody's asking, can this team do it this year? Can they get into the Eastern Conference Championship? And if so, can they win it? And can they get into the finals?
I believe they can. I said it. I think I said it. I don't know if I was the first one to say it nationally, but I did say it probably 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. on Scott Van Pelt on Late Night Sports Center at ESPN. And I made a lot of noise because I was all over Twitter. And I said, don't be shocked if the Sixers are in the NBA Finals. And this was well before they went on that long winning streak. I just saw something with this team and coming together, and also looking at the landscape of the East and a lot of incomplete, inconsistent, and flawed teams, plus injuries. And I said, this might be stacking up for this team to peak at the right time and get there, as they believe they can. So, yeah, I do think they could. It's not going to shock me one bit if you find the 76ers playing in the NBA Finals. The West is going to be interesting to watch what happens out there. I think Pelicans and Golden State's going to be a great series. Even with or without Curry, I think New Orleans is going to push them and really test Golden State because New Orleans is playing incredible basketball right now. And then you're going to have Houston probably on their series tonight with Minnesota, and then most likely right now, I think they're going to end up with Utah. So two great semifinals out there, but in the East, Philly right now, to me, has the inside track. They look like the most complete team. They're the healthiest. They're playing the best brand of basketball on both ends of the floor. And they have this sort of carefree mentality of that they don't know that they're supposed to feel pressure. They don't feel any of that. They just feel like we're ahead of the curve. Let's go. I think Toronto, they still have moments in games where they get really tight because this is the first time they've had expectations to get to the finals. They were the number one seed, and now when they go through the 6-minute stretch where they don't make shots, I feel the tension that they are feeling. Cleveland and these other teams have got issues. Philly doesn't have any of that right now. They are playing free and loose and having a blast, and they're going out there every night with two transcendent, all-time great potentially players that can dominate their position at the perimeter and in the post. And that gives teams great amount of confidence if you're a role player that you can go out there, stay in your lane, knowing that you've got as much talent as anybody in the league.
Tim Legler, you'll be seeing him all over ESPN with the NBA playoffs really cranking up. The second round will be here this weekend. If the Celtics win tomorrow night, Game 1 in Boston, Saturday night, that game here on 97.3 ESPN. Tim, we appreciate it, pal.
My pleasure, gentlemen.